All right. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamunatira Manachari. Yamunatira Manachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Mr. Pad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Ashtotirtha Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Ashtotirtha Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. All right. Text 49. All right. All right, we'll be on page 691. 691. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so we're sure we did 48, huh? Okay. All right. On this 9th day of March, 2026 in San Diego. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 18, conclusion, the perfection of renunciation. Text 49 on page 691. Asakta buddhi sarvatra jitatma vigata spaha naishkarmya siddhim paramam sanyasenadigatchati. Asakta buddhi sarvatra jitatma vigataspiha naishkarmya siddhim padamam sanyasenadigatchati. Asakta buddhi sarvatra jitatma vigataspiha naishkarmya siddhim padamam sanyasenadigatchati. Asakta buddhi sarvatra jitatma vigataspiha naishkarmya siddhim padamam sanyasenadigatchati. Asakta buddhi sarvatra jitatma vigataspiha naishkarmya siddhim padamam sanyasenadigatchati. Luis. Asakta buddhi sarvatra jitatma vigataspiha naishkarmya siddhim padamam sanyasenadigatchati. Asakta buddhi sarvatra jitatma vigataspiha naishkarmya siddhim padamam sanyasenadigatchati. Hami. Asakta buddhi sarvatra jitatma vigataspiha naishkarmya siddhim padamam sanyasenadigatchati. Anyone online?
Prem Gopal and Eddie.
Please, both of you chant, but not together.
Asakta buddhi sarvatra
Asakta buddhi sarvatra
chittatma vigataspраha
jitatma vigataspiha
naishkarmya siddhim paramam
naishkarmya siddhim padamam
sanyasenadigatchati.
sanyasenadigatchati. Eddie? I guess
He
not.
says no. No, he says no.
Okay, I got it. All right, word by words. Asakta buddhi, having unattached intelligence. Sarvatra, everywhere. Jita atma, having control of the mind. Vigataspраha, without material desires. Naishkarmya siddhim, the perfection of non-reaction. Padamam, supreme. Sanyasena, by the renounced order of life. Adigatchati, one attains. Translation. One who is self-controlled and unattached and who disregards all material enjoyments can obtain, by practice of renunciation, the highest perfect stage of freedom from reaction. Report. Real renunciation means that one should always think himself part and parcel of the Supreme Lord and therefore think that he has no right to enjoy the results of his work. Since he is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, the result of his work must be enjoyed by the Supreme Lord. This is actually Krishna consciousness. The person acting in Krishna consciousness is really a sannyasi, one in the renounced order of life. By such a mentality, one is satisfied because he is actually acting for the Supreme. Thus he is not attached to anything material. He becomes accustomed to not taking pleasure in anything beyond the transcendental happiness derived from the service of the Lord. A sannyasi is supposed to be free from the reactions of his past activities, but a person who is in Krishna consciousness automatically attains this perfection without even accepting the so-called order of renunciation. This state of mind is called yoga arudha, or the perfectional stage of yoga. As confirmed in the 3rd chapter, Yastvapnodatadev syat, one who is satisfied in himself has no fear of any kind of reaction from his activity. Om jnana timirandasya jnananjana shalakaya chakshur unmilatam mena tasmai shri gurave namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So this is the title of this chapter, is the perfection of renunciation, and this is what Sri Krishna is describing right here. One who is self-controlled and unattached, who disregards all material enjoyments, can obtain by practice of renunciation the highest perfect stage of freedom from reaction. So, if one is not going to enjoy the fruits of his action, what is he going to enjoy? He's going to enjoy Krishna enjoying those fruits. He's going to take pleasure when Krishna takes pleasure. That's actually the definition of pure devotional service, is to find no other pleasure in life but giving Krishna pleasure. And again, the analogy, the closest thing we have in the material world is a mother's love for a little baby child. Baby child doesn't even know the name of the mother yet, you know. All she knows is this big being who's just saturated with love for me and just ready to give, you know, whatever I need. There's just this natural bond. And on the mother's part, the baby is happy, well-fed, healthy, you know, regular baby, then the mother is very pleased. The baby doesn't have to do anything and reciprocate. Just reciprocate with that, you know, joy in being served by the mother. So that's really the perfection of this Naishkarmya Siddhim. Siddhim means perfection. Naishkarmya is a Sanskrit word meaning no reaction to your works, good or bad. You know, a good reaction, oh, right, now I'm getting some good karma, maybe I can go to heaven. You know, that's not Naishkarmya. Or it's just sinful activity that results in suffering. But Naishkarmya means there's no karma at all. You know, it's a kama karma yoga, I think it's called like that, another name for it. So how can you be a kama? In other words, if you're not a devotee, then you have to be moved by this material desire in any species of life. That you know, some rudimentary species, a dog or a cat, you know, then they have, you know, something to eat. They have their master who's looking out for them, taking them out to walk. You know, I see it every morning, and it's really a tragedy because they're putting their love into these animals. You know, that's why you keep a dog and a cat. You may or may not know this, but there are fewer children being born in America by percentage. You know that. People are getting married later, and sometimes they don't even want to have kids. You know, you don't have to worry. You can have plenty of sex without having kids. Just use contraception. You know, and it's very. I mean, it's not even normal material life. It's very distorted, and it leads to madness. Really, this is what we have today. You know, this crazy society. So Krishna consciousness is really sanity because it's in tune with who we really are as spiritual beings, rather than being controlled by the material body and the mind and the senses and the sense objects and all these things, and working hard to enjoy as much as possible. Control. If we're actually living according to our real nature, which is spirit souls, part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. It's just like the perfect analogy probably would give the hand and the other elements of the body. What is the hand's perfection? You know the story he would tell. He had so many stories, analogies by which to learn. That the senses, the hands and the feet and the eyes and all the other senses, they had a meeting. They went down to the Union Hall, and they had this meeting, and they decided to go on strike. So we're doing all this work, you know. We go to get the money, and we take them to the grocery store and buy all these things, and it all goes into the stomach. The stomach is enjoying like anything. He doesn't do anything. He just sits there, and so we're getting on. So this is not fair. So we're going on strike. We're not going to do that anymore. So after a few days, they started to feel a little weak. Maybe 2 days at most, because they weren't getting fed. And finally they realized, hey, for us to feel normal and enlivened and everything, we have to feed the stomach. And so they took it up, and So similarly, we, having a mentality detached from the Lord, forgetting Him, not knowing anything about Him, being in ignorance is the cause of our suffering. Because even if you're in the upper crust, you have millions of dollars or even billions of dollars, you can buy whatever you want, go wherever you want, do whatever you want. It's all just a dream, because in the ultimate reality, it's all taken away by time. The body gets weak inevitably. Disease comes, even if you have so much, you can buy this doctor, that doctor, eventually finished. So then what happens? You don't die. Nobody dies. You leave the body. And then what? Whatever you had to do to get all that money and keep all that money, is undoubtedly sinful. Then suffering, unbelievable suffering. And but the real tragedy is futile. It's a waste of time. And this is one of the phrases you learn from the Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu, the Nectar of Devotion. Avyarta kalatvam. Don't waste any time. Every second is precious. If you don't have anything to do, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. And whatever you do, you mold your life in such a way under the guidance of the acharyas and the sastra. There's three main pillars of authority. Pramana. You remember this word pramana? The very last verse of the 16th chapter, I was emphasizing that. Tasmat. It's nice. The whole chapter ends with the word therefore. Very logical, right? Let's wind it all up and summarize. Tasmat shastram pramanam te karya bhavastito gyatva shastra vadanoktam karma karta miharasi. So the first line says, therefore, and I won't lead up to the therefore, but he said, therefore, to determine what to do and what not to do. And that's what life is all about. You do one thing and not another. And then gradually you get into habits that you used to work in a certain way. But if you don't just, consult your mind, your whims about what to do, but you consult as evidence, as authority, Shastra, bona fide Shastra, which are the words of Krishna and the words of the authorities which follow Krishna. So we have these three pillars of authority: Guru, Shastra, and Sadhu. You see? So really, the ultimate authority is the revealed Shastra. And the definition of a Guru or an Acharya. Definition of an Acharya is someone who knows the Shastra, who teaches the Shastra, and who follows the Shastra. See? So Acharya, the word Acharya comes from the word Achar, which means behavior, activity. So the behavior is in tune with the orders of Shastra, and whatever he teaches is also based on Shastra. That's the Acharya. So that the Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. Sadhu is one who may not be your Guru, but still he also follows the rules of Shastra. So it all boils down to the Shastra, and that's why Prabhupada was so eager to get the Bhagavad Gita published and the other books, and he came with the Bhagavatam, the ultimate Shastra, and the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Every book that he published was full of this authority, and it all had this unique flavor. The Upanishad, Upanishads generally you don't find so much glorification of Krishna directly. There are some, the Gopal Tapani Upanishad especially, Isha Upanishad means. But many of the Upanishads more emphasize the impersonal aspect, not Isha Upanishad. He gave that. And, of course, the nectar of devotion, nectar of instruction, that was really important when it came out. That's wholly and solely for devotees, 11 verses. It's short because it's just the nectar of all of the most important instructions. And you follow it. It is in order. I won't go into detail now, but I remember when that came in, that was very important because it gave so much practical, essential instruction for the devotees and how they should act and relate to each other and so many things. So all of that, Prabhupada gave us, and then it was translated into all these different, languages. And they're still going out by the thousands, every day. Even our little efforts here are very inspiring, So we're at the point now, this is almost the end of the book, and now he's winding up, and he's giving the perfection of Naishkarmya. The whole thing is perfection of renunciation. So Naishkarmya is very closely related to renunciation. Renunciation simply means renouncing the fruits of your activity. You don't just throw them away, you give it to Krishna. That's the perfection. And then you're connecting to Krishna beautifully. And remember that it's the attachments that we develop that are like ropes. Sometimes they're called knots in the heart that bind us to the next body. If you die and your heart, consciousness is full of all these unfulfilled desires, then you get your body to fulfill it. And it may, in this age especially, it may be a subhuman body. So the way to remain free of that, mukta sangha, free of sanga's attachment, is to be doing your work for Krishna, and feel you can just imagine, just kind of visualize. I remember, I was so fortunate to join where I did when I did. So all of the books were being produced in the temple that I joined in Brooklyn, Henry Street, Brooklyn, in 1973, and all the artists were there. These legendary artists. Parikit was there, and Muralidhar Jadharani was always painting. She was one of the most senior-most artists. And just try to imagine their meditation as they see this painting here of Sita Ram and Lakshman, manifesting before their eyes, and and Prabhupada loved these paintings. Said, "Oh, these are like windows to the spiritual world." He encouraged the painters like anything, And so and then of course they weren't getting paid. They were getting supported, basically. But the paintings all became part of the books, printed by the thousands, And so how fulfilling is that? And I had, a little bit of to do when I was a proofreader, But you feel so good. The book comes out, and all those little mistakes you found are corrected, And so that's your contribution. And that's exactly what bhakti is all about: helping the Krishna to reach out to the conditioned souls, so that to make them as fortunate as we have been to have this exposure and to have this facility. And Krishna is very pleased with that. And the more that Krishna is pleased with what you're doing, the more pleased you are. Because don't forget, we're part and parcel of Krishna. He's in our heart. You see, every one of our hearts. And so when you're really serving him, then he's giving you, your measure of bliss. And the more pure you are, the more bliss you feel. Just by that consciousness. It doesn't require any money, just enough, something to clothe yourself, feed, anyway, basically. So this is very important. Asakta buddhi, unattached intelligence, not the intelligence full of all kinds of ideas. How can I enjoy? How can I do this? Make this money? No, intelligence. How can I serve Krishna better? Controlling the body, mind, and intelligence. Vigata spriha. He's emphasizing the same thing. Without material desires. This is the perfection of Naishkarmya, perfection of non-reaction. The karma activity without any reaction, good or bad. Because it's all bad. If it's supposed to be good, it'll take you to heaven. You don't want to go to heaven. Please. Millions of years trying to enjoy in Nanda, and then coming down here again. So that's what Krishna is leading up to. Finally, the most confidential instruction he'll give in a few verses. All right. Text 50. Siddhim. Again, he mentions perfection. That was in the last verse too. Siddhim prapto yata brahma. Tatapnoti nabodhame. Samasena eva kaunteya. Nishta jnanasya gyapara. By the way, I forgot to mention, Jeffrey, you played the cartels perfectly. I was watching, you know, you were concentrating. That's the thing. Just a, you know, a little, any percussion instrument, especially the drum, the primary, you know, qualification of a good drummer is not that he can play the fancy beats, but that he stays exactly with the leader. That's the whole thing. When I was a kid, I had the good fortune to play in a little band and an orchestra, and we had what was called, I forget what the term was, chamber music. Chamber music. Instead of a big orchestra with so many violins and everything, there would be one violin, and I think we had a French horn, and we definitely had an oboe and a clarinet. I was the clarinet player, you know, 4 or 5 of us. It's very traditional from the Mozart time and everything. And, you know, we had the classical music and we play, and the main thing is you have to listen to each other. You know, first you have to tune up, everyone's in tune, and that, I forget who's selling the beat. There was no drum per se, but, you know, someone was the leader. And that's the whole thing with music, you know, that it's a concert, meaning that you're in tune with each other. So when the cartels are in time and the drum is playing nicely, this Nilesh is very good. He stays with, you know, like I'm not going to, you know, criticize any other drummers, but he's the best in terms of that. You know, and he was trained in Bombay Temple. I think he learned in the Bombay Temple. So anyway, that's pleasing to Krishna when everything is in tune and everyone's, you know, singing nicely. Okay, so now 50, right? Siddhim prapto. We did this. We did this one. Okay.
No, I mean,
we did the Sanskrit. Okay. Yeah, I saw everyone chanting so nicely. So we'll read the translation. O son of Kunti, learn from me how one who has achieved this perfection can attain to the supreme perfectional stage, Brahman, the stage of highest knowledge, by acting in the way I shall now summarize. So this is all leading up to the essential verses 65, 66. Purport. The Lord describes for Arjuna how one can achieve the highest perfectional stage simply by being engaged in his occupational duty, performing that duty for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One attains the supreme stage of Brahman simply by renouncing the result of his work for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. That is the process of self-realization. The actual perfection of knowledge is in attaining pure Krishna consciousness. That is described in the following verses. Okay, so now we're coming to the climax of the whole book. 51 to 53. Buddhya vishuddhya yukto dvityatmanam niyamyacha shabdabdin vishayang shakva ragadvesha vyudasyacha viviktasevi lagvashi yatabakaya manasaha dhyana yoga pado nityam vairagyam samupashvitaha ahankaram balam darpam kamam krodham parigraham vimucya nirmama shanto brahma bhuyaya kalpate. Being purified by his intelligence and controlling the mind with determination, giving up the object of sense gratification, being freed from attachment and hatred, one who lives in a secluded place, who eats little, who controls his body, mind, and power of speech, who is always in trance and who is detached, free from false ego, false strength, false pride, lust, anger, and acceptance of material things, free from false proprietorship and peaceful, such a person is certainly elevated to the position of self-realization. Purport. Now this purport I think is a little longer, yeah. Well, no, not really. 54 and 55 are all very, very often quoted verses. When one is purified by intelligence, he keeps himself in the mode of goodness. Thus one becomes the controller of the mind and is always in trance. He is not attached to the objects of sense gratification, and he is free from attachment and hatred in his activities. Such a detached person naturally prefers to live in a secluded place. He does not eat more than he requires, and he controls the activities of his body and mind. He has no false ego because he does not accept the body as himself, nor has he a desire to make the body fat and strong by accepting so many material things. Because he has no bodily concept of life, he is not falsely proud. He is satisfied with everything that is offered to him by the grace of the Lord, and he is never angry in the absence of sense gratification. Nor does he endeavor to acquire sense objects. Thus, when he is completely free from false ego, he becomes non-attached to all material things, and that is the stage of self-realization of Brahman. That stage is called the Brahma Bhuta stage. When one is free from the material conception of life, he becomes peaceful and cannot be agitated. This is described in Bhagavad Gita 270. Apuyamanam machalapatishtam samuddhamapa pravashanti yadvat tadvat kamayam pravashanti sarve sashanti mapnoti nakamakami. Very appropriate because we're sitting by the Pacific Ocean. It means the peaceful ocean, right? Peaceful. A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. Yeah, Brahma Bhuta stage, and that Brahma Bhuta stage is going to be described in more detail in the next verse, which is a very famous verse, as is in text 55. Yeah. So, okay. Text 54. Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma Nashochati Nakankshati Samak Sarveshu Bhuteshu Bhaktim Labhate Param. One who is thus transcendently situated at once realizes the Supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He never laments or desires to have anything. He is equally disposed toward every living entity. In that state he attains pure devotional service unto me. And the Supreme Brahman is Krishna. That's the idea. Purport. To the impersonalist, achieving the Brahma Bhuta stage, becoming one with the Absolute, is the last word. But for the personalist or pure devotee, one has to go still further to become engaged in pure devotional service. And that's why the last line in Bhaktim, he's saying they maintain the devotional service to me. This means that one who is engaged in pure devotional service to the Supreme Lord is already in a state of liberation called Brahma Bhuta, oneness with the Absolute. Without being one with the Supreme, the Absolute, one cannot render service unto Him. In the Absolute conception, there is no difference between the served and the servitor, yet the distinction is there in a higher spiritual sense. In the material concept of life, when one works for sense gratification, there is misery. But in the Absolute world, when one is engaged in pure devotional service, there is no misery. The devotee in Krishna consciousness has nothing for which to lament or desire. Since God is full, a living entity who is engaged in God's service in Krishna consciousness becomes also full in himself. He is just like a river cleansed of all dirty water. Because a pure devotee has no thought other than Krishna, he is naturally always joyful. He does not lament for any material loss or aspire for gain, because he is full in the service of the Lord. He has no desire for material enjoyment, because he knows that every living entity is a fragmental part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and therefore eternally a servant. He does not see in the material world someone as higher and someone as lower. Higher and lower positions are ephemeral, and a devotee has nothing to do with ephemeral appearances or disappearances. Ephemeral means temporary. For him, stone and gold are of equal value. This is the Brahma Bhuta stage, and this stage is attained very easily by the pure devotee. In that stage of existence, the idea of becoming one with the Supreme Brahman and annihilating one's individuality becomes hellish. The idea of attaining the heavenly kingdom becomes a phantasmagoria, and the senses are like serpents whose poisoned teeth are broken. As there is no fear of a serpent with broken teeth, there is no fear from the senses when they are automatically controlled. The world is miserable for the materially infected person, but for a devotee the entire world is as good as Vaikuntha, or the spiritual sky, The highest personality in this material universe is no more significant than an ant for a devotee. Such a stage can be achieved by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, who preached pure devotional service in this age. So this is actually, Prabhupada is quoting a verse here. You don't see the Sanskrit, but it's a very famous verse written by, I forget, Gopal Bhatta's uncle. You know that is Gopal Bhatta. Anyway, he wrote this. It says, Kaivalyam nadakayate, Chudasapur akasha pushpayate, Durdantendriya kada sarpa patali prodkata dangstrayate, Vishwam purna sukhayate, Vidimahindradishta kitayate, Yat karunnikataksha bhaivabatam tam goldamevastuma. Oh God, I can't believe I forgot his name. My brain is going. Anyway, so it's a famous verse. Prabhupada would often quote it, and he more or less gave a translation. Kaivalyam. Kaivalyam is oneness, you know. So for a devotee, so the last line tells, you have to translate that first. For one who hasn't been empowered by the merciful sidelong glance of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by engaging fully in the Sankirtan movement like that. Here's the result. Kaivalya, merging into Brahman, is like going to hell. Kaivalya narakayate, and Naraka is hell, you see. Kaivalyam narakayate. Tridashapur akasha pushpayate. Tridashapur refers to the heavenly planets. It's sometimes 30 or 30 million, whatever. Akasha pushpayate is no more real for him, is no more enticing than a sky flower. Where's the sky flower? There's no such thing as a sky flower. So it's imaginary. Who cares, you know? They want to go to the heavenly planet. And then this is, you know, so he's dealing. This is first is the impersonalist merging into Brahman, like going to hell. Then the next one is not kaivalyam nadakayate dashapur, and then going to the heavenly planets is just imaginary. Who cares, you know? And then the yogis who work so hard to control the senses, right? So durdantendriya, it means difficult to control senses, which are like snakes, poisonous snakes that will bite you, you know, by inducing you to engage in sense gratification and spoil your whole thing, you know. So they're like snakes who have their poison teeth taken out. If there's a cobra and he opens his mouth and there's nothing there, there's no fang, you just laugh at him, you know. So that's the idea, because for the bhakta, those devotees of Lord Chaitanya, the senses are there, but they're all being used for Krishna. So they're your friends, because you can clap, you can play the kartals with your hands, you can see the Lord. Every sense is connected to Krishna, so they're your friends. So Durdan Kala Patali Prodkata Dagstrayate. And then Vishwan Purna Sukhayate. The whole universe is filled with happiness, whereas because you see Krishna's pastimes going on everywhere. You see, everything reminds you of Krishna. Can you imagine? But that's what it really is. And then the thing about and Vidhi Mahindra, the great demigods like Vidhi, Brahma, and Indra and Shiva, they're no more significant to you than little insects. You offer your respects to them, but you don't worship them. You don't need anything from them. You don't pray to them. All because Karunya Kataksha means the merciful sidelong glance. Yet Karunya Kataksha Vaivabhatam, empowered. Vivaivatam golden eva. I offer that golden. I worship that golden avatar of Lord Chaitanya. It's a glorification of Lord Chaitanya. So that's a very important verse. And this verse itself, Brahma Bhuta Prasanapa. Now, just an editorial note: the importance of the revision of this Bhagavad Gita, because the original Prabhupada was dictating these translation. So the word prasanatma, which Prabhupada would often, it's mentioned in the purport, and he would often refer to it when quoting this verse, that someone who is fully on the spiritual platform is by nature very joyful. You're tuned in to that source of pleasure, that reservoir of pleasure of Krishna. Nashochati Nakanchati. So Prabhupada had left that out. There was no translation of one who is thus transcendently situated once realized Supreme Brahman. He never laments or desires. See, I skipped over the and becomes fully joyful. So that was restored to the translation when it was revised. That's why this is the second edition. There's so many revisions. So we should appreciate it and thank Jai Vaidya Maharaj for his hard effort, and Gopi Puranadana for so many corrections like that. All right, we have time to do the next one, which is one of the most important verses in the whole book. We're coming to the climax now. Bhaktyamam abhijanati yavanyaschasmi tatpataha tato mam tatpato gyatva vishate tadanantaram. One can understand me as I am, Krishna speaking, of course, one can understand me as I am, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by devotional service. And when one is in full consciousness of me in such devotion, he can enter into the kingdom of God. The Supreme Personality of God, Krishna, and his plenary portions cannot be understood by mental speculation, nor by the non-devotees. Now here, Prabhupada has a very substantial purport. If anyone wants to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he has to take to pure devotional service under the guidance of a pure devotee. Otherwise, the truth of the Supreme Personality of Godhead will always be hidden. As already stated in the Bhagavad Gita 7.25, Naham prakasha sarvasya. Krishna says, I am not revealed to everyone. He is not revealed to everyone. No one can understand God simply by erudite scholarship or mental speculation. Only one who is actually engaged in Krishna consciousness and devotional service can understand what Krishna is. University degrees are not helpful. Now, just one comment on that. And the reason is very simple, that whatever we know of God in truth is revealed by Him, proportionate to our devotion and our effort to serve Him. So you may have so many ideas and so many things that you think are about God, but if it's not based on devotion, it's not based on revelation, then it's just imagination. And there's so much of that going on. One who is fully conversant with the Krishna science becomes eligible to enter into the spiritual kingdom, the abode of Krishna. Becoming Brahman does not mean that one loses his identity. This is against the Mayavadis, they're always preaching that. Devotional service is there, and as long as devotional service exists, there must be God, the devotee, and the process of devotional service. Such knowledge is never vanquished, even after liberation. Liberation involves getting free from the concept of material life. In spiritual life, the same distinction is there, the same individuality is there, but in pure Krishna consciousness. One should not mistakenly think that the word vishate, enters into me, supports the monist theory that one becomes homogeneous with the impersonal Brahman. No. Vishate means that one can enter into the abode of the Supreme Lord in one's individuality, to engage in His association and render service unto Him. For instance, a green bird enters a green tree. This is famous from the actually there's a verse in the Bhagavatam like this. A green bird enters a green tree not to become one with the tree, but to enjoy the fruits of the tree. Impersonalists generally give the example of a river flowing into the ocean and merging. This may be a source of happiness for the impersonalist, but the personalist keeps his personal individuality like an aquatic in the ocean. We find so many living entities within the ocean if we go deep. Surface acquaintance with the ocean is not sufficient. One must have complete knowledge of the aquatics living in the ocean depths. Because of his pure devotional service, a devotee can understand the transcendental qualities and the opulences of the Supreme Lord in truth. That's in truth, a very important word. As it is stated in the 11th chapter, only by devotional service can one understand. The same is confirmed here. One can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead by devotional service and enter into His kingdom. After attainment of the Brahmabhuta stage of freedom, that's from the previous verse, for freedom from material conceptions, devotional service begins by one's hearing about the Lord. When one hears about the Supreme Lord, automatically the Brahmabhuta stage develops, and material contamination, greediness, and lust for sense enjoyment disappears. As lust and desires disappear from the heart of a devotee, he becomes more attached to the service of the Lord, and by such attachment he becomes free from material contamination. In that state of life he can understand the Supreme Lord. This is the statement of Srimad Bhagavatam also. After liberation, the process of bhakti, or transcendental service, continues. The Vedanta Sutra 4.112 confirms this. Aprayanat tatrapi hi drishtam. This means that after liberation, the process of devotional service continues. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, real devotional liberation is defined as the reinstatement of the living entity in his own identity, his own constitutional position. The constitutional position is already explained. Every living entity is a part and parcel fragmental portion of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, his constitutional position is to serve. After liberation, this service is never stopped. Actual liberation is getting free from the misconceptions of life. Prabhupada is quoting when he says in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the second canto, there's actually a little table of contents, a couple of verses describing the 10 different subjects dealt with in the Bhagavatam, and one of them is mukti, and there's a definition of that. Muktir hitbanyata rupam swarupena vivastitihi. This is the Bhagavatam definition of mukti. It's not merging into the Supreme and losing your identity and just being I am that I am. No. It means hitva anyata rupam, giving up all these other forms that we've been inhabiting. Even in this one body, all these different bodies we go through, like babyhood and adult and adolescence and all this stuff. This is a transmigration. Krishna explains at the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita. But none of them are really us. We're in the body as a spirit soul, and we haven't really regained our understanding of our real form and our real identity. We each have a sarup, means an original form with senses and everything, by which we can serve Krishna in our own specific rasa. We've lost touch with that, and we've inhabited all kinds of forms and trees and insects and human beings that are not our real self. Because they're always changing. They're asat. We are sat, Satchidananda. So, to understand that form and to live in that form, even before you leave this body, you can understand what that is. And you're serving Krishna in that mood in your spiritual body, even in your mind. And then when you leave the body, then you actually regain that form and you go back to the spiritual world. So that's the idea. And this verse is so important. How can one understand Krishna? Only by bhakti. This is what this verse is all about. Bhakti amama vijanati yavanyastatmi tattvataha. And this word tattvata appears twice in this verse. In other words, one may have an inkling of who God is, right? Okay, God is all-powerful, and He's omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent, right? But that's not going to help you, that's going to not sufficient to really love God. That's just an intellectual idea. How does one actually regain one's full understanding of one's personal relation with God and one's form, one's specific identity? We all have our original identity. So one has to serve Krishna in truth. This word comes up several times earlier in the Bhagavad Gita. The famous verse in the 4th chapter, Janma karma chame divyam evam yoveti tattvataha tukva deham puna janma naitimam mekti sojana. One who can understand the transcendental nature of my birth and activities, birth and pastimes, right? In truth, in reality. If one actually comes to that point, then he doesn't take birth again. He'll come back to me, he says. But again, in that verse, the very important word which Prabhupada often emphasizes when he quoted that important verse in his lectures and purports, emphasized tattvata, in truth, because a lot of people have in India, you have the Krishna snack bar, and everything. In other words, there's all kinds of misconceptions about who Krishna really is. So one has to understand in truth. And again, we get that from genuine Shastra as explained by genuine Acharyas, Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. Then you're assured of going back to Godhead. That's what Krishna says right in chapter 4. So that verse in truth wasn't in the translation. It's in the word by words. I think probably is in reality. So that's another one that I want to put back in, that one who understands in truth the transcendental nature of my birth and activities is sure to come to me, and he won't take birth again. So this is the adventure of, revising the Bhagavad Gita where it's necessary, only where it's necessary. Okay, so let's see. We'll do one more, and then we'll do some poetry. And we're coming up to the climactic verses. He reiterates what he gave at the end of the 9th chapter. Man manabhava mad bhakta repeats that verse. Okay, text 56. Sarva karman yapisada. Kurvano man vyapashayaha. Mat prasadada vapnoti. Shashvatam padamavyayam. Though engaged in all kinds of activities, my pure devotee, under my protection, reaches the eternal and imperishable abode by my grace. Purport. The word madhyapashriyaha means that the protection of the Supreme Lord, means under the protection of the Supreme Lord. To be free from material contamination, a pure devotee acts under the direction of the Supreme Lord or his representative, the spiritual master. There is no time limitation for a pure devotee. He is always 24 hours a day, 100% engaged in activities under the direction of the Supreme Lord. To a devotee who is thus engaged in Krishna consciousness, the Lord is very, very kind. In spite of all difficulties, he is eventually placed in the transcendental abode, or Krishna Loka. He is guaranteed entrance there. There is no doubt about it. In that supreme abode, there is no change. Everything is eternal, imperishable, and full of knowledge. So Prabhupada is writing from direct experience here. Always 24 hours a day, 100% engaged in activities under the direction of the Lord. And to undertake what Prabhupada, having the complete faith. If you recall, there's these 6 elements of surrender. Krishna is that Anukulyasya sankalpa, pratikulyasya bhajanam, rukshashatiti vishvasko, goptvidvevanavantata, atmanikshepri karpani, shadvada shadanagati. Shadana means shelter, means going, taking shelter of the Lord. So, to accept the things favorable for the Lord, to service, and to give up the things unfavorable. Now, it's interesting, and everything is significant, that accepting the favorable comes first. Because as soon as you accept the favorable things, chanting Hare Krishna and doing these things, immediately giving up the things that are unfavorable become possible and easy. It's not okay, before you chant Hare Krishna, you got to follow the 4 regular principles. You can't do it? You're out, No. You can't follow any one of the 4. That's okay. Chant Hare Krishna. Anyway, that's the whole idea. Lord Chaitanya had there's no hard and fast rules. You chant. And if you're serious about chanting, you'll get the spiritual strength to give up these other things which you see are impediments. You lose the taste, The sweetness of the holy name just makes everything else insignificant, if you're really serious, So anyway, that's how it goes. And so let's see. The Lord is very, very, very kind to a devotee thus engaged. He's always 24 hours a day. So to come to that state, of 24 hours a day, to sleep and dream about Krishna, because, you just read Krishna book, you always read Krishna book before you take rest, then it becomes, it's like, I'm not at that stage, unfortunately, yet. But I can imagine it, because I've had some days where, you spend all day in Krishna consciousness and still, like a Rath Yatra day in LA, there's service from, of course we have a good time on the bus, but then there's, procession, then okay, a little break, but then you have to go serve out, so there's service all the time. And you just, it's not like, are you kidding, more service? No. It's like, all right, now we get this variety, go to this, because it's all enlivening. It's all enlivening the spirit, like that. All right, we're almost out of time, so a little time for some poetry. And let's see. What haven't we heard for a while? Okay, so this is the meditation on Krishna going out into the forest and then taking his friends out and running along the bank and then swinging in the trees. With lovely peacock plume upon his head and fragrant flower placed upon each ear, he enters Braja's wood with graceful tread, a handsome dancing actor without peer. His golden yellow raiment brightly glows, his splendid garland reaches to his knees, and from his luscious lips the nectar flows and fills his flute with charming melodies. As Krishna thus begins his blissful day, with cowherd friends who sing his glory sweet, he beautifies Vrindavan's forest way with fine impressions of his lotus feet. Yes, thank you. So now they're out of the immediate village, and now so Krishna's running ahead with Balaram on the banks of the Yamuna, because now the whole day of play is going to start. We're going to get really tight. Let's go, said Krishna. Don't delay at all. And he and Balaram began to run ahead of all their coward friends who called, "Oh Krishna, Rama, let us join the fun." And off they ran to Braja's forest haunts, to play in every bower, grove, and sward. The boys would tease their friend with playful taunts, forgetting his position as the Lord. Sri Krishna is inviting us as well to join him in his pastimes, which enthrall. The wise heed Krishna when they hear him tell, "Let's go, my friends, do not delay at all." You see, so there's a couple of words that are a little. The word haunt. You may know what a haunt is. Of course, ghosts haunt you. No, it's not that. A haunt is a place where you frequent, where you go. You know, your favorite places in the forest. And then the sward. It's not a sword. It's a sward. That's W-A-R-D, which means a meadow. They would play on the meadows and run around like that. So so now they're well into the forest, and Krishna is swinging on the boughs. This is a special pastime. For Krishna and his multitude of friends, a festival of joy each day would bring. A special thrill in Braja's forest glens was riding with him high upon a swing. So he's riding there, and a couple of boys are swinging him, and so he's talking to them. For Krishna and his multitude of friends, the festival a special thrill in Braja's forest glens was riding with him high as upon a swing. O Ujjala, Sridama, Bhadrasena, these are some friends. O Ujjala, Sridama, Bhadrasena, just see Vrindavan's bountiful delights. The peacock's dance, the songbird's sweet refrain, the lakes and hills and other scenic sights. All these make this the best place on the earth for us to play all day and herd the cows. Thus Krishna, in the mood of sportive mirth, enthused his friends while swinging from the boughs. And with those pictures, there's paintings for each of those, which I can share with you. If you have my file, it's in the file, you see? Little paintings that are done for all of these pastimes. So then you can go to sleep remembering those pastimes. And maybe the pastime, maybe even the poem will come to mind. You go back to guided. All right, so let's adjourn. We're behind as usual. And we'll go to Srila Prabhupada. And we'll resume tomorrow with a few more fortunate souls from the Taco Tuesday crowd.